anything can be foundationally accurate if you have a good enough POA, or as the corporates call, mission statement. But any producer will tell you, if you don't have good coordination, stay away from choreography. Any PR firm will tell you what's cringe you don't want to have in the public eye, because product placement means sales, and sales are numbers, which numbers don't lie. Men lie, women lie. Men lie, women lie. It's just, I be killing. It's just that evident. Don't indict me because I ain't part of it. Part of it, I found my niche and now I gotta spit. Spit on the sidewalk because this is what I'm with. What I'm with, I say it is. That's how I feel I am. Feel I am a best then. One of you ain't not on my level because I'm up 10. Get the specs, check the specs, then take that note again. Ooh, alright, shit. We're gonna wait on the ground again. Oh, we'll wait on the ground again. Alright, so in explaining like what these systems are, these are inanimate objects, but when you're gonna have yourself... Shit. I know this is super weird. I'm on the ground right now because everyone keeps turning and I'm that pissed off. Usually I'd throw my bike when there's cars turning and I'm trying to cross, but I've thrown my bike so many times that it's become disaligned ever so slightly, and we'll get into more of that later. But first, the coast is clear. And never vlog when you cross the street, because that's you're indicting yourself in jaywalk. Because when you know, if you can get nitpicky in taxes, you can get nitpicky in jaywalking. But not to mention going on the opposite end of the road from activity is always a plus because it's less noticeable. Okay, so in inanimate objects, the opposite of this would of course be closed loop systems, ones that are like, they would say animal cruelty or human rights. These are things that, I don't want to say are autonomous, but conscious. So you're gonna have yourself things that are interesting to me. Anthropods. These are things like the arachnids with the exoskeletons, of course. A seahorse, believe it or not, exoskeleton. One thing in particular interesting when mentioning germination earlier was that these animals that spawn themselves without having to mate. And so that's like a crossover between how plants are with what animals do. And then also it's notably important that seahorses are males, and they're the ones that are the progenitors of life in that species. When I say progenitors, I mean the ones that carry the offspring and then release them. Oh. And I'm pointing out these is because we started with dipoles and explaining what a seam is. We quickly moved into what a field is to understand how fields are handled for manipulating the same thing that a seam would with a trigger, but in the excess of a value unit quantity. And so those things are really easily mistaken because they can get used as the same. But it's more importantly to note that there's inanimate objects and then life forms. And when we're talking about like what single-celled things are, it gets blurring the lines between what consciousness is. And so that's like a third chapter. So there's certain things that they hit a seam and then they are able to extrapolate. Other things need to be coursed in order to cure, to be exemplified. If there's a lot of chalk in my hand and it starts disintegrating before my eyes, it didn't have to be in my hand if there's a lot of it in an environment. So if you want to start explaining what systemery is, you start with what single cell organisms are in like where consciousness comes from. And so if you can vector these two things together, you're going to be looking at what you can manipulate as a foundation, because with fields, you can always add more with assembling technology. And with a seam, you can always get more accurate if you have enough power, magnitude onto the seam comes accuracy. And by having these two things, magnitude with power to get accuracy and space that's allocated a lot, by numbers that assemble specifically in crystalline structure, you're going to be able to overcome the uncertainty principles, which govern everything. Has the uncertainty principle that its core value is the time aspect, where no one knows at any point in time where a single point is when you're getting to these autonomous zones of single-celled, and what consciousness is, as well as what is the position. Time and position are uncertainty principles. So the position of the assembling field, you'll know where it is if your seam has got magnitude accurate enough, because GPS is like the foundation of what seams can do. And it's no surprise why everyone wants satellites, so that they can seam the best. So because they're polar opposites, one wanting a whole bunch of space in order to have its field be a capacitance plate. See, capacitance plates are material, but a vacuum can look as though it's a anti-plate because it's a field. So if you've got an entire football field, you can put an entire metal plate underneath the field, and they're doubling as the same thing. Okay, so the vacancy on top and then the plate on the bottom. I didn't mean to put the two examples on top of each other, but nonetheless, that's one and the same for all intentional purposes in explaining what coursing is and curing. So a curing of a course is like a whole entire, I guess, magnetosphere is one way in explaining it. But back to seams, if you hit like a seam, and then this, it can be like a seam on the cup, the inside of it, or the seam is like a dipole is one way of explaining it. If it's like these magnetospheres. But this is really what, in germination, the seed, it pops out at a certain place. And this is where it is germinating out from. This could be known as a hairball theorem, where if you have infinite amount of hairs combed over onto a closed loop system like a circle, there's going to be one hair popping out, and that's what the hairball theorem is. And that's why it's so important with infinitely many humans that we had one Jesus. And then so, not that it had to happen, but it did. And so then the same thing with the seams. It would be the, I fancy it like a glow stick, how you like pop, or you crack a glow stick and then it spews out and it is in a full effect. It's got that inner casing that needs to get broken. Another example would be a transmission in a vehicle. It's closed, and that's why it works. The moment it cracks open or starts to leak, your tranny starts leaking, the whole car is crap. So when you're explaining what a motor card is, once the tranny goes, the motor car is ostensibly just a cart.